Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens, and this is Carly Stevens Books for all things writing, publishing, and indie author life. And today I am very excited to have J.R. Wolf with us. So, hi, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so J.R. Wolf is a dark and urban fantasy author who dabbles in fairy tale retellings. She lives in the beautiful state of Colorado with her husband and two children, even with a degree in racing and mechanics, which is interesting, and I'll want to know a little bit more about that. She decided to alter her career in exchange for the dream of becoming an author. When she's not dealing with her day job or working on her latest project, you can usually find her taking long walks in ancient forests where wild things roam, gaming against evil foes, or catching the biggest fish. That's such a cool biography. I wanna spend well, I don't wanna spend my time walking among ancient forests, that sounds a little scary. But very cool, a fellow Colorado author.
Yeah.
So let's kick things off. What was it that first got you into writing? Can you, just kind of explain your backstory a little bit?
Yeah. I've actually been writing for a really long time. It actually started because of my grandmother.
Mm.
She, I was always on her computer, playing on her computer, and one day she asked me if I would write her a story. And ever since then, I just used to write like little short stories for her. And it was actually really cute. She kept them in a folder for me. So then, like years later, she gave them to me. And she's like, I just want to let you know that I saved these. And unfortunately, she passed in 2013. But before she passed away, she made me promise that I would publish a book one day. So I finally got the nerve to do it. And now here I am.
That
Three
is
books, 4 books later.
that is so sweet.
I know.
I love that. Yeah, it's something else to have family and friends who are, that supportive of what it sounds like your dream was.
Yeah.
So you are a writer of dark, twisted fairy tales essentially, and that's what we're going to be talking about mostly today, like how, why, all the things about twisted fairy tales. So the way we met was at a live book event where I saw this twisted Little Mermaid looking retelling, and you said it was piratey. I bought it immediately. And so I'm wondering what drew you to the particular fairy tales that you have chosen to redo. Is it a particular character? Is it just the nostalgia of particular stories? Talk me through that.
Yeah, so I mean, we've all loved those, the Disney movies as kids. But as I got older, I read a lot of like the Brothers Grimm side of the fairy tales and those, the darker, twistier versions. And then I've read like Nikki St. Crow as far
Hmm.
as dark and
Hmm.
twisted, right? So I've read a lot of different stories and I actually never intended to write fairy tale retellings. It was just luck of the draw. Because I actually started writing urban fantasy. Like that's where I wanted to go was urban fantasy. I'm a huge Patricia Briggs fan. Like her Mercy Thompson series is my favorite. But after that, my best friend Ray actually turned me more into like the darker fantasy side of things. Um, and I actually came across that cover for A Sea of Unfortunate Souls that my cover artist was just a pre-made. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. And the story, it like clicked. I don't know
Hmm.
why, but it was just like Once Upon a Time meets Pirates of the Caribbean. And that's where it went. So I had no ideas on character, no ideas on plot. I just saw the cover and I was like, yes, let's do it.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I relate. I relate to that. It's not that there's necessarily this big backstory. Sometimes you just go, I'm going to start this thing, and then you have
It
this thing, and
clicks.
it's really cool, and you
Yeah.
didn't plan it all out in advance. Yeah, I love those old Disney movies myself. I'm wearing Haunted Mansion earrings
Oh,
as
I
we
love
speak.
it. That's awesome.
So how do you make sure that you're giving a fresh take to these fairy tales? You said, or I mean, fairy tales I'm using kind of loosely, but Pirates of the Caribbean meets Once Upon a Time. What a premise! But how do you make it new?
Yeah, I think it's really important to know the original stories, to do your research and read other books in that genre to really decipher like what makes yours stick out. because it is really hard. There's so many authors out there, so many different books, especially in the fairy tale genre. Like there's just, it's kind of overflooded. So it is really hard, right? And I think what I usually do is just start by, again, reading the books in the genre and really thinking about the essence behind what I want out of my characters in the plot.
Mm.
I love plot twists and cliffhangers, which I was surprised because normally I don't like cliffhangers. But once I started reading the genre, I once I started writing in the genre, I realized how fun they were to write,
Mm.
and it made me appreciate reading them more. So yeah, I really dig into those and draw inspiration from, life experiences and how I'm gonna just make it my own. And I think that it really paid off in these stories.
So you write twisted fairy tales. So what is it that makes your fairy tales twisted?
Yeah, so there's a lot of like all the characters that you see, even in Once Upon a Time and the fairy tales and stuff, they all have a really dark undertone.
Mm.
So for instance, Ari, the main character, she is a monster hunter, but she's also a sea witch. So she can command the seas, she can the skies, and she can make it storm and all of that kind of stuff. And she sails hunting monsters trying to find out who killed her parents. Like her ultimate goal, why she's on this trip in general, is because of that. And then you have characters like Captain Hook, and my Peter Pan is not the Peter Pan that you normally would think of. He's in the beginning, he doesn't know who he is,
Hmm.
and he has to try and fight through that. And he kind of has, in the second book, you'll see that he kind of has like a split personality almost. And he's having a hard time trying to figure out which one's the right one, essentially. And then, I have a lot of other characters like Maid Marian, Robin Hood, and they all have that just darker, they're hunters or assassins or, yeah, murderers, pirates. I mean, it's all it's all dark and twisty, right? And then as far as like Pirates of the Caribbean vibes, I mean, pirates. Need I say more?
You need not, but we're we're chatting about the twisted side of things. I guess having your main characters be pirates and sea witches and these kind of inherently darker characters can lend an interesting angle to a story that's normally seen from a lighter view.
Right. And you know what I like about my fairy tales a little bit is because I there is romance in it, right? So it's very slow burn, but enemies to lovers between Ari and Captain Hook.
Hmm.
But it it kind of takes a little seat to the back. Because of that, that's another reason that makes it different.
So using some of these famous stories, you mentioned Captain Hook, among others, Peter Pan. It makes your books easier to market. I mean, you so quickly hooked me in with the cover, and then you didn't even need to tell me the plot. You just said pirates meets Once Upon a Time, and I thought, all right, it's that familiar meets slightly different that makes retelling so popular. But
Right.
I imagine that that is also a bit of a double-edged sword. Do you ever find that you get bad reviews, for example, from people who just expected one thing and it didn't go quite the way they were anticipating, or have you run into any problems like that?
I think it's important to first of all, when you're pitching anything with your book, is to have a good blurb, right? Like
Mm.
authors, we always abide by the blurb. And I think that that's a good way. So, like in mine, at the very end, I actually say like this is a 68,000, dark and twisted tale, and then just having those expectations of like this is not for the faint of heart,
Mhm.
like this isn't what you think it is, because you don't want them to be carbon copies, obviously. I've never actually had any readers get upset about certain aspects that I may or may not have included. Um, I did once get a review that said I was dropping too many names in my story, which always kind of makes me chuckle because I market it as Once Upon a Time, and there's just every character of fairy tale in that. So I feel like that right there should already tell you, right, that there's going to be a lot of those characters in there. So yeah, I just think that, I do my best to put it in my blurb. and to let people know when they come up to me that each individual story is a different, based on a different fairy tale. So they all commingle, and that it is very much once upon a time. So you're going to see a lot of those characters.
And you have the convenience of having some shorthand with those characters as well. If Captain Hook walks into a room, I might not know your Captain Hook, but I already have expectations. It's not like,
Right.
somebody I've completely no context for walking in, which I feel is more of a well, I mean, maybe it's just personal to me, but I feel like that's more of an issue because I have to learn so much and I have to keep track of so many people. But if it's Snow White and Peter Pan, I can figure out who your versions are, but it's much easier to keep track of a lot of characters.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that, it's in my stories, I like to keep their essence, right? So like Captain Hook is still, he is the villain sort of in the beginning, right? Like him and Ari are rivals. They are both monster hunters. They both despise each
Mhm.
other, and he still has the hook. And she's the Little Mermaid, right? Ari is the Little Mermaid. So you know that like I'm saying that she is a sea witch and a pirate captain and a monster hunter, but there's more to her. And through this journey, she finds that out. So like each and like I said, Peter Pan, he doesn't remember who he is, but at the end of the day, like he's still like his lost boys are his everything,
Mm.
and Tinkerbell is still his best friend, and so like I still have aspects that we all know and love, right? So
The recognizable
yeah,
ones.
and as you're reading them, like I sometimes leave little hints. So if you're reading it, you're not 100% sure who that character is. It's like, oh wait, I think I might know. As you start to read, as it
Mhm.
leads up to it.
And who doesn't like that? A little Easter egg here and there, kind of
Yeah.
figuring it out. At least I certainly do.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, retellings are, I think, popular for a reason. Dark, twisted retellings are having an absolute moment. You
Yes.
mentioned Nikki St. Crow, they're the Emily McIntyre ones,
Yeah.
that are a twist to Disney versions of fairy tales, which is different than just the fairy tale, and it sounds like you do some Disneyfied, versions as well. Are there any copyright considerations to keep in mind? Because I imagine the Disney version would, in some cases, have a different set of rules than a Grimm fairy tale version, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important to know that, you know, the stories that we know for fairy tales weren't written by Disney, right? So they've been around for years and years and years. So it's better to, when you're going through and researching and you're going through and reading, it's good to look at those stories, right? Just stay completely away from Disney as much as possible. Like we try, and because of all the other stories that they're public domain, so there you can write about them. So it's more important to make sure that you're focusing off those than the other ones. So for example, like you're not going to see me using names like Flounder or Sebastian and My Little Mermaid retelling, right? Yeah, they're not going to be in
I
there.
mean, we do have the title to talk about.
Yes, yes.
A sea of
Um,
unfortunate souls, you say?
yeah. And obviously, if you read that, you're going to be like, "Oh, that's got to be Little Mermaid," right?
It's true,
Yeah.
but I don't know that there's any trademark on just the
No.
phrase or
Yeah.
anything.
No, there's not. Not that I know of, and I did a lot of research. So yeah, just like I said, just making sure you're knowing which version that you're wanting to base it off of and making sure that it's in public domain. And then you're good to go.
All right. Yeah, it's a good reminder for people that it's not just a free for all with Disney properties, but that most of those come from older things that you absolutely can use.
Yeah.
So for people who are interested in getting into this style of work, which just sounds like so much fun, what advice would you give people who are just starting out writing dark and twisted fairy tales of their own?
Yeah. So it's kind of like I mentioned before, just doing the research, knowing the material, but not infringing on Disney versions. Have fun with it, right? Make it different. Find ways to twist the versions we love and really make them stand out. When I started writing, keeping in mind that this was the first novel that I wrote and published, The Sea of Unfortunate Souls, I remembered words that my grandma told me a really long time ago, and I always go back to her because she is my inspiration. But she always just say like, write because you love it, write because it's what you were meant to do. If you
Mm.
sit down and you write a full-length story and publish it, that is the best accomplishment you can give yourself as a writer. Keep pushing on and good things will come. So if that's what inspires you, and go for it. Do your research, read in your genre, and yeah, keep on keeping on.
I love that. Yeah, it's true. Jumping on trends is not the best method. This is not a get rich quick sort of
Absolutely.
career to have. And so yeah, I love that you just brought it back to that joy. Like what is it that you love writing? If it's this, then immerse yourself in it and then you'll
And if
you'll
you
go
can
farther.
enjoy, and and I know that they say that to follow, if you follow trends, like that's where the money is and stuff like that. But for me, yes, I would love to get there, but I also want to write what I love to write. Like I write for the joy of it, not just to sell books. I write for the joy.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yes.
So where can people find you and your work online?
Yeah, I'm all over the socials, bit besides X. I think that's the only one I'm not. And then my work can be found at any of the online retailers, as well as TikTok. Actually, on my TikTok, I have signed versions, and I have like swag and stuff like that that goes with them. So you can't find that anywhere else.
Ooh, what's
So I
the
usually like
what's
to
the handle?
it's just Jara Wolf.
Oh, across socials, just JR
Yeah,
Wolf.
yeah. It's either that or author J.R. Wolf. I think like Instagram, it might be J.R. Wolf, and then TikTok, I think it's author J.R. Wolf. So yeah, it just depends on which one you're going for. Um, but yeah. And then my website is currently down, but I'm working on getting that back up, and I'm gonna do direct sales out of there as well.
All right, well, lovely. I'll put all of those links down below, including the website. So this will go live beginning of November, and
Okay.
it'll continue to be there. So definitely click on the website, see if it's operational, see if you can get those signed books and everything. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and talking all about writing twisted fairy tales. I'm excited to read this one. Still on my TBR. I've been reading spookier things,
Of course.
but I'm definitely going to get to this one, and it looks amazing. So yes, definitely check out J.R. Wolf. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this, writing, publishing, indie author life, and I'll see you next time.